we're going to discuss the difference between equals equals and dot equals. Couple things to know. First of all, equals equals is used for comparing the equality of primitive types. Primitive types, we mean, of course, byte, short, int, long, float, double, boolean, and character, all of those being the lowercase versions, not the wrapper types. It also is used for references to determine whether two references refer to exactly the same object on the heap. And so when we compare references, we're saying, are they exactly the same object on the heap? Exactly the same object on the heap. You could compare this to comparing two pointer values in C or C++. The second thing to know is that dot equals is a method, so it can only be used on objects. It can only be used on objects. And it is a method that is always inherited from the big capital O object class, the big capital O object class that all objects in Java derive from, inherited from capital O object, unless it is overridden. The third thing to know is that the default behavior from object for dot equals is exactly the same behavior as equals equals. This is the point that people often miss. That's the important point to remember. If you do not override dot equals in your own classes that you create, the behavior will be the same as equals equals. Let's underline that twice because that's really important to remember. So, the fourth thing to know is what the purpose of dot equals is. The purpose of dot equals, as reflected in classes like string and array list, where it has been overridden correctly, the purpose is to compare the content or the state of an object. Compare the content or the state. That is why we provide it in provided in object so that it can be overridden for every class. Every class, like string for example, the way you compare the content of the object for string is to look at each of the individual characters and see if they're the same. The way you would compare a student class is to see if the perm numbers are the same, for example. So your responsibility, if you're creating your own class, your responsibility is to override override equals in a way that makes sense for that class. Override equals in a way that makes sense for that class. Okay, so we'll stop there for this video, And in the next video, maybe I will do some examples of each of these four principles.